20s was the birth of jazz, which was also the birth of many musicians and singers' careers. This was the time when people like Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, Jelly Roll Morton, and Bessie Smith could show their talents to the world. The 20s was full of hits like What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong and It Don't Mean a Thing by Duke Ellington. The amazing musicians that made these songs have just as amazing backstories, to which I will tell you now. One of the most famous musicians in the 20s is Louis Armstrong. He was born on August 4th, 1901 in New Orleans, Louisiana. At a young age, he taught himself how to play cornet with his mentor, Joe Oliver. He played in various bands, such as Kid Ory's band and the Tuxedo Brass Band. In 1922, he moved to Chicago to join Joe Oliver's Curly Jazz Band. A few years later, he moved to New York City, where he played in the Fletcher Henderson Orchestra, which is when he switched from cornet to trumpet. Eventually, Armstrong moved back to Chicago and started to sing and start his own band, which he toured with through the 1930s. In the 1940s, he formed a small jazz band called the All Stars and toured all of them for the rest of his life and career. He died on July 6, 1971 of a heart attack at the age of 69. Next, we have Edward, or Duke Ellington, who was born on April 29, 1899 in Washington, D.C. As a child, his mom played piano, which he learned to play as well and started to play professionally at age 17. In 1923, he moved to New York and formed a band called the Washingtonians. He went on tour with them, and in 1927, he played at the Cotton Club with many of his fans. His show was also broadcasted through the radio. After his big turning point in his life, he went on a big tour in 1931. Then throughout the 1950s to the 1960s, he played with other musicians such as John Coltrane and Coleman Hawkins. He died of lung cancer on May 24, 1974 in New York City. Rolling on in next is the one and the only Jelly Roll Morton, who was born on October 20th, 1890 in New Orleans, Louisiana. He learned how to play piano at a young age and was kicked out of his house when he started to become a top jazz musician. In 1915, the song Jelly Roll Blues might be the first jazz orchestration ever published. He moved to Chicago in 1922, and in 1926, he led his band the Red Hot Peppers. Their music led to the start of the swing movement. Also, in 1926, he recorded with the Victor Talking Machine Company to make his songs. He died on July 10, 1941, due to heart failure in Los Angeles, California. The flapper girl herself, Bessie Smith, was born on April 15, 1894, in Chattanooga, Mississippi. Her parents died when she was young and made a singing duo with her brother to support themselves. In 1912, at 18, she joined the Moses Stokes Company, who she sang and danced for. Later, she joined and became a performer at the Theater Owners Booking Association through the 1920s and the 1930s. In 1921, she was ready to record, but her early auditions were unsuccessful. She then got married in 1923 to John or Jack G. and made her recording debut at Columbia Records. Her first two songs, Gulf Coast Blues and Hearted Blues, sold over 750,000 copies in their first year. Throughout the 1920s, she made over 160 recordings at the Columbia and appeared briefly in movies. In 1931, Columbia Records dropped her, which was the turning point in her life. This caused her to drop out of favor and her music prices were reduced due to depression. She died due to a fatal car crash on September 26, 1937 in Clarksdale, Mississippi. Even though these jazz legends have passed, their music still lives on till this day. That's why it is important to learn about how these musicians were ordinary people with dreams that they accomplished through all their tough times. Each of these musicians and singers were led because they did what no one wanted to do. They introduced a new form of music to the world for everyone to enjoy and listen. They opened new doors and started new chapters for some people to continue their legacies. I believe the music that we hear today was influenced by these great musicians.